Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. Days passed. Song Ke, Master God Diviner, and Chen Manyao all had their own personal space in Bai Xiaochun's cabin, and were able to enjoy the treatment that only cultivators in the top 10 of the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Superstars could receive. Filled with gratitude, they did their best to focus on their cultivation. Bai Xiaochun wasn't very far from the great circle of core formation, and couldn't help but feel that he was already quite formidable. Therefore, he spent most of his time basking in the sun on his balcony and looking out at the sea, which was exactly what he was doing right now. The main deck of the ship wasn't very far above Bai Xiaochun's balcony, and among the cultivators there was Gongsun Waner, who was apparently also staring out at the sea. Bai Xiaochun finally looked away from the seawater and then took a long swig of spirit alcohol. Now this is the life, he said with a sigh. Behind him were two puppet handmaidens who were massaging his shoulders. Occasionally, huge waves would roll across the surface of the water, but at the moment, it looked more like a beautiful golden mirror. By this point, Bai Xiaochun was used to the wind, and as for the seawater, because of the techniques he cultivated, it wouldn't harm him unless he was exposed to it for long periods of time. Furthermore, because of the spell formation built into the battleship, the incredibly intense spiritual energy in the water was softened and purified before entering the ship. Sighing, Bai Xiaochun looked back at his huge cabin, and saw Song Ke, Master God Diviner, and Chen Manyao all sitting cross-legged in meditation, apparently completely focused on their cultivation. Feeling a bit bored, he decided that he should probably go find someone to chat with. These guys are too focused on cultivation. This half a year is a time to enjoy things. Once we reach our destination, we'll be heading into the outposts of the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Sect and the Great Wall. Things definitely won't be as comfortable there. Wouldn't it be great if Shu Baosai were here? Taking another drink of spirit alcohol, he was just contemplating how to alleviate his boredom when, all of a sudden, he saw a golden flash of light off in the distance. Some distance away, a school of golden fish had just leapt up out of the seawater, flashing through the air like golden sparks before splashing back down into the water. Considering how sharp Bai Xiaochun's vision was, he could see the fish quite clearly, and was able to tell that they were about as long as a human arm. They were covered with glittering golden scales, and most shocking of all, had two heads. Furthermore, those two heads weren't located next to each other. Rather, the second head was where a fish's tail would normally be. Golden loaches, Bai Xiaochun exclaimed, shooting to his feet. He recognized these strange fish from one of the volumes of spirit creatures he had studied in the Spirit Stream sect, and knew that they were a very rare type of spirit fish. Such spirit fish didn't need to be refined into medicinal pills to be consumed as food. They were a precious material of heaven and earth that could strengthen the chi passageways and bolster divine sense. Fish like that could be very useful for cultivators, and if they were older than 100 years of age, could even help when stepping into the nascent soul stage. As Bai Xiaochun looked excitedly out at the sea, the school of golden loaches once again broke the surface of the water. Then a huge amount of water exploded up as a fish 10 times larger than any of the other ones launched itself up into the air. Just like the other fish, it was golden in color and had two heads. However, there was something ancient to this one, as though it had lived for a very long time. Furthermore, its scales glittered with a golden light that surpassed the other fish. 100-year-old golden loach. Gasping, Bai Xiaochun waved his hand, sending a stream of frigid qi out which instantly wrapped around the fish. However, a stream of power shot back toward him, destabilizing his cultivation base and very nearly dragging him off of the balcony. Expression flickering, he quickly called out at the top of his lungs, "Care, Master Snort Snort, little Manyao, hurry up and help me. I hooked a precious treasure here." Song Ke, Master God Diviner, and Chen Manyao immediately opened their eyes from meditation. Song Ke seemed a bit irritated, and Master God Diviner was also slightly annoyed. As for Chen Manyao, she had the same smile on her face that she usually did. However, when all of them looked over and saw the huge loach leaping into and out of the water, their eyes went wide. Song Ke was the first to rush out, followed by Chen Manyao and Master God Diviner. "Hurry up and help me," Bai Xiaochun said excitedly. "If we can catch this fish, we'll have a great dinner tonight." With that, he poured some more cultivation base power into his efforts. Thankfully, as a member of the Spirit Stream sect, he had been cultivating control power for quite some time, and was very familiar with it. Therefore, despite the fact that the fish had already dropped back down under the surface of the water, he still managed to maintain a connection to it. The struggling of the enormous fish was causing huge waves to roll out, along with intense crashing sounds. Thankfully, Song Ke and the others quickly arrived to help. Song Q's right hand flashed with an incantation gesture, and a shadow spread out from his feet and into the water. Although the water weakened it a bit, it still managed to shoot directly toward the huge fish. Master God Diviner also performing an incantation gesture as he unleashed the power of a magical item. Chen Manyao's actions were the strangest of all. After performing an incantation gesture, she opened her mouth and spat out a pink cloud, which rapidly shrank down into the shape of a mist hawk that let out a piercing cry as it dove toward the fish. Bai Xiaochun let out a whoop of excitement. Moments ago, he had been bored, but now everything had changed. "Come on everybody, don't hold anything back," he shouted. "We can't let this fish get away." Bai Xiaochun's excitement was rubbing off on the others, whose hearts began to pound. Considering how much this huge fish was struggling, they all could tell that it wasn't anything ordinary. The fish struggled mightily, even letting out muffled cries that reached the cultivators who were gathered on the deck. As for Gongsun Wanner, she wasn't too far away from Bai Xiaochun's position, and when she looked down, she could actually see the fish, as well as Bai Xiaochun and his Dao protectors. Laughing softly in amusement, she waved her finger in the direction of the huge fish, unleashing her own cultivation base power to aid Bai Xiaochun and the others. Bai Xiaochun sensed that Gongsun Wanner was helping them, and was quite moved. "Wanner," he shouted, "help us reel in this fish and we'll all have a great dinner." Gongsun Wanner looked down at Bai Xiaochun, smiled, and said, "Dinner? You mean tonight?" "Yeah," he replied, not thinking much about her question. Under the combined efforts of the group, the struggling fish slowly weakened, and soon, they managed to heave it up out of the water toward the battleship. Laughing excitedly, Bai Xiaochun extended his hands to grab the fish. Simultaneously, excited smiles broke out on the faces of Song Ke, Master God Diviner and even Chen Manyao. Although catching his huge fish hadn't involved any danger, they were out in the middle of the heaven-span sea, and had worked quite hard to succeed. However, even as the huge fish flew through the air, a figure burst into motion from the deck, moving like lightning to unleash his Great Circle Core Formation cultivation base power. Before anyone could do anything, he had waved his finger in the direction of the fish. Instantly, a huge hand appeared in the middle of the air, which rumbled toward the exhausted fish, and then hit it with such intense power that it instantly died. Next, the hand wrapped around the fish and pulled it back toward a young man on the deck of the ship, who swished his sleeve to pull the fish into his bag of holding. "What are you doing?" Bai Xiaochun shouted, enraged. Unable to react in time, he had no choice but to fly up to the deck, fuming with anger. Song Ke, Master God Diviner, and Chen Manyao all joined him, where they confronted the young man face to face. "Hey," Bai Xiaochun said, "we saw that fish first, and we're the ones who weakened it. We were just about to grab it, you thief." Shockingly, the young man in front of them had once been in the top 3 of the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Superstars, but was now in 5th place. His name was Ji Fang. "Are you kidding me?" Ji Fang said, a cruel expression twisting his face. "I have the fish now. It's mine." Of course, he completely ignored Song Ke and the others, and only looked at Bai Xiaochun and Gongsun Wanner, albeit with complete scorn. Ji Fang had been eyeing the golden loach the entire time. Virtually everyone on the battleship had almost instantly begun to covet it, with the exception of Zhao Tianzhao, Chen Yushan and Heretic. Therefore, Ji Fang had simply decided to snatch it in the heat of the moment. Although he did fear Bai Xiaochun to some extent, he was confident that he could handle him, even if he teamed up with Gongsun Wanner. After all, Bai Xiaochun wasn't the only one with people to back him up. Ji Fang had his own followers. Therefore, he didn't even bother to respond, and simply turned on his heel and walked off. Insufferable bully. Bai Xiaochun grumbled angrily. To have his belongings openly robbed was a bitter pill to swallow, and he was just about to step forward to prevent Ji Fang from leaving when Master God Diviner grabbed his arm. "Junior Patriarch, just let it go. Ji Fang used to be in the top 3, and even though he's dropped down to 5th place, he's still terrifyingly powerful." "It's just a fish," Song Ke said through gritted teeth as he watched Ji Fang walking away. "There's no need to get into a big fight over it. That might make things problematic once we reach the sect outposts." Considering that everyone was persuading him to back down, Bai Xiaochun clenched his jaw and let out a cold harumph. He could tell that both Song Ke and Master God Diviner felt the same way and didn't want to offend Ji Fang. Even if Bai Xiaochun made a move on his own, it would still drag them into it, so therefore, he really had no choice other than to just grin and bear it. "That guy is too overbearing," he muttered. "With a personality like that, he'll definitely get killed once we reach the wildlands." With that, he returned dejectedly to his cabin. After the scene was over, only Gongsun Wan'er remained standing there. Although no one noticed it, she was chuckling as she watched Ji Fang walking away. Then she licked her lips, a strange light flickering in her eyes. Looks yummy, she murmured to herself. Nothing happened that night for Bai Xiaochun. He sat cross-legged in meditation, mulling over the day's events and feeling more irritated by the moment. I can't just let this drop, he thought. Ji Fang might have some skills, but I have even more skills. I have to think of a way to teach him a lesson he won't ever forget. Having reached this point in his train of thought, he opened his bag of holding to look for the little turtle, but even after searching around for quite a while, couldn't find him. By the time the first rays of dawn emerged, he was feeling more depressed than ever. However, it was at that point that the still and quiet atmosphere of the battleship was broken by a blood-curdling scream that echoed out from Deck 3, the very same deck that Bai Xiaochun's cabin was on. There was something terrifying about that scream, as if it had been fueled by a life force that was in the midst of being extinguished. Quite a few people heard the scream, including Bai Xiaochun. What's going on? Song Ke and the other Dao protectors opened their eyes and looked around, shocked. Before long, the other top 10 chosen on Deck 3 began to emerge, Bai Xiaochun included. Even Zhao Tianzhao and Chen Yushin came down from Deck 2, and joined in as everyone searched for the origin of the scream. It didn't take long before they discovered that one of the cabins on Deck 3 had a shriveled corpse in it. The corpse was discovered in Ji Fang's cabin, and after examining it closely, everyone could tell that it was none other than Ji Fang himself. This, Bai Xiaochun said with a gasp. Ji Fang had been withered dry to the point where he was almost unrecognizable. Despite being little more than a skeleton, he clearly hadn't been dead for long, and yet, already seemed to be rotting. Everyone present was a core formation cultivator and a top chosen, and therefore, it didn't take long before they all noticed that Ji Fang had died in a very strange way. Apparently, all of his blood had been drained away. Gasps and looks of astonishment appeared on the faces of everyone present. After all, Ji Fang was in the great circle of core formation, and possessed incredible battle prowess. And yet, there were no signs of magical combat in the area, as though Ji Fang had been killed in the briefest of instants. Even more telling was that Ji Fang's cabin was filled with intense, frigid coldness, something that caused everyone's minds to tremble. Bai Xiaochun stared mutely at Ji Fang's corpse, his eyes wide with incredulity. He had been thinking about Ji Fang all night, and never could have imagined that the following day, he would actually be dead. He really died? Bai Xiaochun was having trouble controlling his breathing, especially when he realized that the corpse itself actually looked very familiar. Before he could put much thought into it, the faces of Master God Diviner and Song Ke drained of blood, and looks of fear began to shine in their eyes. Chen Manyao also gasped, and a look of fear spread out across her face. If the three-eyed Chen Hichan and the nascent soul cultivators had been present, things might not have been as terrifying. But all of those members of the senior generation were gone, and none of the core formation disciples present were quite sure what to do. Therefore, everyone looked to Zhao Tianzhao to take the lead. After approaching the corpse and examining it for a moment, his expression flickered and he said, "It seems that some sort of unclean thing is on board the ship with us. Everyone needs to be extra careful." All the disciples present shivered in fear, and as for Bai Xiaochun, he felt his scalp going numb. Unfortunately, the mystery of Ji Fang's death was not something that could be explained at the moment, so everyone eventually dispersed, maintaining full vigilance along the way. Heart-pounding with fear, Bai Xiaochun returned to his cabin with Song Ke, Master God Diviner and Chen Manyao. As soon as they were all inside, he closed the door and then looked at his ashen-faced friends. Worried that he might be reading too much into the situation, he tentatively asked, "Did you guys also think that corpse looked familiar?" Face filled with alarm and terror, Master God Diviner replied, "Junior Patriarch. That corpse reminds me of the corpses back in the river defying sect. It looks exactly the same." Song Ke growled. "I noticed it too," Chen Manyao said after a moment. "This corpse looks just like those other corpses." Upon hearing their responses, Bai Xiaochun felt like his scalp was tingling so hard it was going to explode. Considering how familiar the corpse seemed, and coupled with Zhao Tianzhao's words, he couldn't help but think about what had happened back in the river defying sect. Now, the confirmation of his three Dao protectors left him convinced that the two events were connected. "Damn it," he wailed. "How could this be happening? I came all the way here, and that unclean thing followed the entire way." The more he thought about it, the stranger it and more terrifying it seemed. In fact, he immediately produced some evil warding talismans from his bag of holding and plastered them onto himself. Of course, that wasn't enough for him. He quickly urged Master God Diviner and Song Ke to help him set up some more spell formations in the cabin. Then he went into his own private room and set up some additional spell formations, and also made sure he had plenty of soul convergence pills ready. I have evil warding talismans, spell formations, and soul convergence pills. If that unclean thing has any sense at all, it won't dare to provoke me. Yeah, that's right. If it provokes me, it will definitely meet a miserable end. Scowling on the verge of tears, he continued to try to encourage himself with the fact that Song Ke and the others were also present. Considering that they were around, it wasn't likely that the unclean thing would come for him. But then he remembered that Ji Fang had been in the great circle of core formation. Considering that he was also in the core formation stage, that left him feeling more unprotected and unsafe than ever. The image of Ji Fang's desiccated, blood-drained corpse remained floating in his mind constantly. Just what kind of ghost are we dealing with, he thought. When is that diva Chen Hichan going to get back? It was in this manner that he stewed in his anxiety and vigilance for an entire night. He wasn't the only nervous one, of course. Song Ke, Master God Diviner, Chen Manyao, and all the other chosen on Deck 3, and even the disciples on Decks 4 and 5, were all very anxious. If any other person had been killed, it probably wouldn't have been a big deal. But Ji Fang had been in 5th place in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Superstars, with extraordinary battle prowess. And yet, he had still met a bizarre and grisly fate, leaving everyone feeling completely ill at ease. When dawn came, and people checked around and found that no one else had died, people finally began to breathe sighs of relief. Bai Xiaochun was slightly less anxious, but not by much. Taking advantage of the daylight, he set up more spell formations both inside and outside of his room. Sadly, he wasn't good at creating paper talismans, otherwise he would have painted many more such items to ward off evil spirits. 3 days passed by in a flash. No one died, and soon, the atmosphere on the ship returned to normal. People once again went up onto the main deck. However, everyone still felt a great weight on their hearts, and often looked up into the sky, hoping to see three-eyed Chen Hichan and the nascent soul cultivators returning. Eventually, half a month went by. And yet, Chen Hichan and the others still were not back. However, no one had been killed during that time. At long last, Bai Xiaochun breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe I was mistaken. Maybe Ji Fang was killed, not by the unclean thing, but by that big fish? After much thought, Bai Xiaochun wasn't able to determine whether or not the 100-year-old loach could possibly have been the cause of death. However, he knew that he definitely couldn't come up with any answers locked in his room, so eventually, he called on his Dao protectors to discuss the matter further. Over the past few days, his Dao protectors had been too rattled to focus fully on cultivation, but once they heard this new fish theory of Bai Xiaochun's, they began to calm down. Finally, after more than half a month of remaining in seclusion, Bai Xiaochun emerged and headed up to the main deck. There, he happened to catch sight of Gongsun Wan'er, who also seemed to have come up to the deck to relieve her boredom. Upon catching sight of Bai Xiaochun and his Dao protectors, she smiled and joined them. Most of the cultivators on the deck were grouped together in 2s or 3s, although a few of them stood by themselves. As such, Bai Xiaochun's group was the largest present. Song Ke was walking behind him, radiating his usual murderous aura that made him seem completely unapproachable. Master God Diviner was walking next to him, looking almost like his personal assistant. And then there was Gongsun Wan'er on one side with her incredible good looks, and Chen Manyao on the other side with her spectacular beauty. Together, they made quite a sight. Many of the cultivators in the area looked over at Bai Xiaochun, and although some of them had cold looks on their faces, many seemed envious. Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath of sea air, looked up into the sky, and then gazed out at the golden sea. Gradually, the weight in his heart seemed to lessen. He sighed. I can't believe our wonderful voyage took such a turn for the worse. Looking around at the crowd, he suddenly realized that a lot of people were looking at him. Turning, he realized that Gongsun Wan'er and Chen Manyao were right by him, and by chance, both of them happened to be smiling at him. They were two different smiles, and two different facial expressions, but they were both very beautiful. All of a sudden, Bai Xiaochun's mood got even better. As of that moment, he discovered a new hobby. In the following days, he would take time every day to go for a stroll on deck, and would always make sure to chat openly with Chen Manyao and Gongsun Wan'er. As they smiled and laughed with him, many of the other cultivators in the area would look over enviously. The more looks like that he got, the more he liked this new hobby, and at the same time, he felt less distant from Gongsun Wan'er. Gongsun Wan'er really is pretty when she smiles, he thought, glancing around proudly at the crowd. As he did, he noticed that up ahead, Zhao Tianzhao was standing there, looking as cold as a statue. During the past few days, he had caught sight of Zhao Tianzhao a few times, as well as Chen Yushan. Both of them were superstars in the top 3, with extremely high status. They were the type of people who didn't need to have an entourage to provoke countless envious glances from the surrounding cultivators. As Zhao Tianzhao walked along, a group of 7 or 8 other cultivators trailed along behind him, looking very subservient. Bai Xiaochun actually recognized some of them from back on Sky Quarter Rainbow, when he'd gone around asking for help to get some 7-colored misty seagrass. Lowering his voice, he leaned over and said, "Hey Master Snort Snort, why do you think all of the superstars are so cold-looking? Zhao Tianzhao looks like he's above everyone else, and it's the same with Chen Yushan and eradicate. They hardly ever hang out with anybody else, and spend most of their time in secluded meditation." Master God Diviner hesitated for a moment and then said, "Well, maybe they act that way because everyone expects them to be like that." Even as Bai Xiaochun contemplated this possibility, he looked over at Zhao Tianzhao, and found that Zhao Tianzhao had turned and was looking back at him. Suddenly, their gazes met. Although Zhao Tianzhao's expression was placid, there was something intense within his eyes that Bai Xiaochun found to be almost painful. Of course, although Bai Xiaochun was definitely the type who feared death, he was not the type who shrank back when someone simply looked at him. As soon as he felt the painful intensity of Zhao Tianzhao's gaze, his own eyes began to shine as he stared back. Though no sound could be heard from the interlocking of their gazes, both of their minds filled with intense fluctuations. Bai Xiaochun's expression flickered, and he stopped walking, and then Zhao Tianzhao retracted his vision. And yet, unlike Bai Xiaochun, Zhao Tianzhao didn't stop walking. Instead, he headed in Bai Xiaochun's direction. Zhao Tianzhao occupied first place among the Starry Sky Dao Polarity superstars, so no matter where he went, he was always the center of attention. When people realized that he was walking toward Bai Xiaochun, everyone began to pay close attention. That was especially true considering that he was flanked by 7 or 8 followers, making it seem like a grand procession. Song Qiu's expression turned very serious, and although Master God Diviner initially gaped in shock, his expression quickly became the same as Song Qiu's. Even Chen Manyao looked surprised. The only one among the group whose expression was the same as ever was Gongsun Wan'er, who even seemed interested to see what would happen with Zhao Tianzhao. As Zhao Tianzhao proceeded forward, silence fell upon the main deck. Everyone was watching as he slowly came to a stop right in front of Bai Xiaochun. His expression was as cold as ice, and he looked like a glistening, unsheathed sword, as powerful as a mountain who could look down upon everything below him. As he measured Bai Xiaochun up, Bai Xiaochun blinked a few times, wondering what exactly was going on. After all, he and Zhao Tianzhao had only ever seen each other a few times, and had never even exchanged words. After a moment, Bai Xiaochun couldn't hold back from saying, "Elder brother Zhao?" Almost as soon as the words left Bai Xiaochun's mouth, Zhao Tianzhao responded in a cold voice, "Junior brother Bai, a word please?" Although Zhao Tianzhao didn't unleash any of his aura, considering his status and accomplishments in battle, he was the type of person that would leave anyone feeling cold with fear. "Huh?" Bai Xiaochun replied, feeling a bit shocked. After a moment of thought, he nodded. The truth was that he wasn't scared, just curious as to why a superstar like Zhao Tianzhao would want to talk with him. Zhao Tianzhao's face remained as cold as ever as he headed toward the prow of the ship. As he neared, the cultivators who had originally been gathered there backed away to make room. More curious than ever, Bai Xiaochun followed along. Of course, he maintained his vigilance the entire way. Although he doubted that Zhao Tianzhao had any ill intentions, he was prepared for anything. Soon Bai Xiaochun and Zhao Tianzhao were alone at the prow of the ship, whereupon Zhao Tianzhao waved his right hand, causing a glittering shield of light to rise up that cut them off completely from everything outside. Clearly, this was not a defensive shield, but rather something that would block both sound and divine sense alike. As of this moment, the two of them would be able to speak freely without anyone else being able to hear. Bai Xiaochun's curiosity continued to mount as he looked expectantly at Zhao Tianzhao, waiting to hear what he had to say. Zhao Tianzhao stood there quietly for a moment looking at Bai Xiaochun, his expression extremely solemn, as though he were wrestling with an important issue. Bai Xiaochun's curiosity was reaching the boiling point, and as for everyone else on the main deck, they were watching the scene play out with various expressions on their faces. I wonder why eldest brother wants to talk with Bai Xiaochun. Something strange is going on. Could it have something to do with the death of Ji Fang? Now that I think about, there was some friction between Ji Fang and Bai Xiaochun right before Ji Fang died. All sorts of speculations filled the hearts of the onlookers. Even as Bai Xiaochun was going to try to make his own guess, Zhao Tianzhao took a deep breath and said, "Junior brother Bai." Bai Xiaochun leaned forward intently. Looking very serious, Zhao Tianzhao said, "Junior brother Bai, those two girls you hang out with are pretty good looking, huh?" Bai Xiaochun said, stunned. Considering the serious look on Zhao Tianzhao's face, he almost wondered if he had misheard him. Listen, don't take this the wrong way, junior brother. I don't have any feelings for them. I just want to know how you managed to win them over. I've been watching you the past few days, and really want to understand how you managed to get two hotties like that to hang out with you." Zhao Tianzhao had a somber expression on his cold-looking face. He seemed tall and proud, like an unsheathed sword. And yet, the words he spoke caused Bai Xiaochun's eyes to go as wide as saucers. Had he not heard the words with his own two ears, Zhao Tianzhao's somber expression would have made it completely impossible for Bai Xiaochun to guess what it was he wanted to talk about. It was completely unexpected. Bai Xiaochun scratched his head, feeling a bit confused. Without even thinking about it, he said, "They're the ones who took to hanging out with me. I couldn't get rid of them if I tried." When Zhao Tianzhao heard this, his expression turned even more serious than before, and he even frowned. Considering his status and incredible battle prowess, a frown like that would make anyone who saw it feel like a thunderstorm were descending. Of course, no one could hear what the two of them were talking about. They could only see the expressions on their faces. First, they saw the incredulity and disbelief of Bai Xiaochun, and immediately began to come up with explanations for why he was reacting in such a way. "Something big is happening. Look you guys. Bai Xiaochun is shaking his head. Now he's explaining something. This is really weird. Look at eldest brother's expression. It's even more serious than before. It's almost like he doesn't believe what Bai Xiaochun just told him." As the onlookers speculated about what was happening, Song Ke and Master God Diviner looked on in shock, completely unable to come up with any ideas of what Zhao Tianzhao and Bai Xiaochun might be talking about. Even Chen Manyao seemed very curious. Gongsun Wan'er was the only one with a slight smile on her face. Meanwhile, up at the front of the ship, Bai Xiaochun was only just now recovering from his shock. It was with a very odd expression that he looked at Zhao Tianzhao, pondering how this was the first-place eldest brother from the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Superstars, a person with a profound cultivation base, who could cut down nascent soul experts. This is the kind of guy the first should probably make friends with, he thought. That way, if someone picks on me in the wildlands, I'll have someone to help me out. Things will probably go much more smoothly with a friend like him. With these thoughts on his mind, Bai Xiaochun smiled and patted Zhao Tianzhao's shoulder like he would a close companion. Voice as casual as a spring breeze, he said, "Eldest brother." Zhao Tianzhao wasn't used to people touching him, and was about to back away, when he heard Bai Xiaochun's tone of voice, and could tell that he was speaking with heartfelt sincerity. Therefore, he allowed Bai Xiaochun to continue to clasp his shoulder. "You have to trust me on this one, eldest brother. Those two girls you saw me with, there are only two of them, right? Well, back in the river-defying sect, I got love letters from tens of thousands of girls." Bai Xiaochun sighed and tried not to look proud of himself. Assuming that Bai Xiaochun must be exaggerating, Zhao Tianzhao frowned. Of course, the expressions playing out on their faces fueled more discussions among the onlookers. That was especially true when Bai Xiaochun clasped Zhao Tianzhao's shoulder, and Zhao Tianzhao didn't back away. Shocked expressions appeared on the faces of everyone present. To these people, Zhao Tianzhao occupied the highest of high positions, and was a completely proud and aloof figure. He was the type of cold person that no one could ever get close to. Therefore, to see this sudden change in behavior was quite shocking. Back at the prow of the ship, Zhao Tianzhao was frowning in disappointment at Bai Xiaochun. In fact, he was actually planning to simply turn and leave. "Hey, you still don't believe me? Alright, look at this." Bai Xiaochun hated when people didn't trust what he said, so he quickly patted his bag of holding, causing a rustling sound to fill the air as vast quantities of love letters began to spill out like rain. There were so many of them that they quickly formed a tiny mountain right there on the deck. Zhao Tianzhao gasped, his eyes going wide with shock and disbelief. He even picked up a few of the letters and read them, whereupon an expression of even greater astonishment appeared. It quickly became obvious that all of the love letters were written by different people, and were not fake. There were even some jade slips in the pile, within which could be seen the beautiful faces of the girls who had delivered them. This. Zhao Tianzhao was starting to pant, and his heart trembled fiercely as it was battered by waves of shock. He looked up slowly at Bai Xiaochun, the same expression in his eyes that he would have if he was facing a diva. Swishing his sleeve proudly, Bai Xiaochun stuck his chin up and said, "See? Now do you believe me? And this is only some of my collection. I have more in my bag of holding." With the snap of a finger, Bai Xiaochun won over the hearts of countless female cultivators in the river-defying sect. The strange scene which was now playing out caused the hearts and minds of the onlookers to be filled with both shock and speculation. No one could hear the words being spoken, and divine sense was useless, so all they could do was watch what was happening. When people saw the huge pile of letters pouring out of Bai Xiaochun's bag of holding, they gaped in shock. At first, many people didn't take the letters to be anything special, but soon people realized that many of them were folded up into the shape of hearts. What are those things? Heavens! Eldest brother is actually going through and reading some of them. Why do I get the feeling that those are love letters? Nah, no way. Have you ever seen anyone with that many love letters? There must be more than 10,000 of them. They're obviously not love letters. Besides, look at the expression on eldest brother's face. He's clearly privy to some mysterious secret, right? How come this Bai Xiaochun only proves to be more and more enigmatic? Of course, when Chen Manyao recognized the love letters, she made a pisha sound, seemingly unsure of whether to laugh or cry. Before people could look at the scene too closely to analyze what was happening, Zhao Tianzhao took a deep breath and waved his hand, causing the sound barrier to suddenly blur, making it impossible for anyone to even see the two of them. Expression extremely somber and profoundly sincere, Zhao Tianzhao clasped hands and bowed deeply to Bai Xiaochun. "Junior brother Bai, I almost can't believe that someone as young as you has such uncanny skill. I wonder if you might be willing to deign to teach me a thing or two." Bai Xiaochun was yet again taken aback by the strange sight of Zhao Tianzhao looking so serious and yet uttering such words. "You want to learn that kind of stuff?" Bai Xiaochun asked quizzically. Eyes shining with solemnity, Zhao Tianzhao took a deep breath and yet again bowed deeply. "Junior brother Bai, please teach me. I want to be happy in life, and if you can bless me with such kindness, I'll never forget it for as long as I live." Bai Xiaochun blinked a couple times as he finally came to realize what was going on. Zhao Tianzhao was clearly the type of person who seemed cold and distant on the outside, but was secretly very passionate and romantic. After a moment, Bai Xiaochun laughed heartily. "Hey, we're brothers, right? What do you mean teach you a thing or two? Let's schedule some time and I'll teach you everything I know. Just tell me which girl it is that you like. There's no challenge that love Saint Bai Xiaochun can't handle." He even slapped his chest confidently to emphasize his words. Zhao Tianzhao heaved a long sigh of relief. They immediately set a time to meet and discuss the matter further, after which Zhao Tianzhao bowed deeply, then dispelled the sealing shield and walked away somberly. Bai Xiaochun put all of the love letters away, and then strutted proudly back to his Dao protectors. Master God Diviner seemed very curious, and although Song Ke was feigning complete disinterest, it was obvious that he was paying close attention to Bai Xiaochun. After a moment, Master God Diviner couldn't hold back from asking, "Junior Patriarch, what were you talking about over there with Zhao Tianzhao?" "I can't say," Bai Xiaochun said, shaking his head in very enigmatic fashion. "It's a matter which touches on the most important thing in elder brother Zhao's life. How could I possibly reveal that information so casually?" Clasping his hands behind his back, he pompously strolled off toward his cabin. Of course, his secrecy only caused Master God Diviner and the others to grow more curious, and it was the same with everyone else who had been present to witness the scene. In fact, many people began making discreet inquiries to try to dig up information, although none of that produced any results. 3 days passed, during which time Bai Xiaochun never left his cabin. Instead, he waited patiently for Zhao Tianzhao to come consult with him. Seeing this, Master God Diviner couldn't help but ask about the situation a few more times, but each time, his inquiries were rebuffed. Finally, though, Bai Xiaochun sighed and said, "I'm waiting for someone." "Zhao Tianzhao?" Master God Diviner replied, shocked. Even Song Q's ears perked up. "That's right," Bai Xiaochun replied calmly. "The truth is that the only person on this entire battleship who can help him is me, Bai Xiaochun." With that, he closed his eyes and continued to meditate, looking prouder of himself than ever. Master God Diviner and Song Ke exchanged a quizzical glance. However, no amount of speculation on their part could provide any insight. Finally, when evening was falling on the third day, Zhao Tianzhao's voice could be heard outside the cabin door. "Is junior brother Bai in?" Master God Diviner and Song Ke looked over at Bai Xiaochun, who slowly opened his eyes. "Care, hurry up and get the door. Manyao, please give us some privacy." Chen Manyao gave a light harumph. She had her own speculations about what was going on, but had no choice but to glide over to her room and close the door. As for Song Ke, his eyes widened to a glare, but he knew that he was a guest under someone else's roof, so therefore he simply gritted his teeth and went to open the door. As soon as the door opened, Zhao Tianzhao appeared, solemn as ever as he walked in with 2 followers. The 2 followers had anxious expressions on their faces. They happened to be 2 of the chosen from the Hall of Devil Slayers that Bai Xiaochun had visited to ask for help buying medicinal ingredients. Back then, both of them had intentionally made things difficult for Bai Xiaochun. One of them had quoted an astronomical price, and the other had pretended to be in secluded meditation. How could they ever have imagined that Bai Xiaochun would suddenly rise to the top in spectacular fashion, reaching the violet portion of the rainbow and shaking the entire sect? Of course, even after all of that, they had still felt confident that Bai Xiaochun wouldn't come looking for revenge, not considering that they were followers of Zhao Tianzhao. But now, it was to their complete disbelief that they learned that Zhao Tianzhao and Bai Xiaochun were somehow very close to each other. What was even more shocking was that Zhao Tianzhao had a very serious expression on his face, and was being very polite. The 2 of them couldn't help but be quite shaken. Upon entering, Zhao Tianzhao took a deep breath and, completely ignoring the fact that Master God Diviner and Song Ke were still present, clasped hands and bowed deeply. Junior brother Bai, I hope you won't laugh at me when I tell you that I've always been in love with junior sister Yushin. I just don't know how to win her over. In terms of compensation, I'll give you anything you ask for, as long as it's in my power. Even a diva beast soul. Master God Diviner took a deep breath, and Song Ke stood off to the side with a look of blank shock on his face. No matter how either of them had considered the matter, they could never have guessed that the preeminently proud Zhao Tianzhao would say something like that upon entering Bai Xiaochun's cabin. They weren't the only ones to be completely taken aback. Zhao Tianzhao's 2 followers were also struck with shock. That was especially true considering that the compensation Zhao Tianzhao was offering was a diva beast soul. All 4 of the other cultivators present were completely flabbergasted by that. Back at the sect, a diva beast soul could be traded for a nascent soul pill, which showed how incredibly valuable they were. Meanwhile, Bai Xiaochun sat there cross-legged, not even having bothered to rise to his feet. In fact, he was actually frowning in displeasure. Then he snorted coldly, flicked his sleeve and angrily said, Elder brother Zhao, you and I got along with each other at first sight, and it was the sincerity of your request that convinced me to help you. And yet here you go and offer compensation? Do you really think that I, Bai Xiaochun, am the kind of person who cares about compensation from you? Face turning even more grim, he continued, Diva Beast Soul. HMPH. If I want one of those, I'll get it myself. You may leave now, Elder Brother Zhao. See yourself out. Master God Diviner and Song Ke suddenly found it hard to breathe, and Zhao Tianzhao's 2 followers' jaws dropped. As for the latter, they had never heard anyone in the current generation of disciples speak to Zhao Tianzhao in such a way. Just as they were about to step forward and berate Bai Xiaochun, Zhao Tianzhao raised his hand to stop them. Giving Bai Xiaochun a deep look, he suddenly smiled, which was something he very rarely did. How foolish of me, my brother. Please don't be angry. The sincerity of his smile and his words caused the hearts of his 2 followers to begin to pound even harder. They had been followers of Zhao Tianzhao for a very long time, and had never once seen him smile. Not only was that shocking in and of itself, but it also made them even more terrified of Bai Xiaochun. Laughing heartily, Bai Xiaochun rose to his feet. Eldest brother, the truth is that I'm just trying to get the best you have to offer. You see, the reason I want to help you is not because I want to make a quick profit, but rather because I seek long-term compensation. And that compensation is none other than your friendship. Bai Xiaochun was of the opinion that the words he had spoken were particularly impressive, and was feeling quite proud of himself for coming up with them. Master God Diviner and Song Ke exchanged a glance, and even Zhao Tianzhao seemed surprised. But then, Zhao Tianzhao's smile grew even more sincere than before. Shaking his head, he sat down in front of Bai Xiaochun. I'm in love with Chen Yushin, Xiaochun. What am I supposed to do? Bai Xiaochun sat down, placing a flagon of spirit alcohol down between them as he did. Master God Diviner, being as quick-witted as he was, quickly took it upon himself to serve them. Bai Xiaochun lifted his cup and took a sip, his eyes glittering faintly. Zhao Tianzhao didn't rush him. Taking a sip of his own alcohol, he sat there waiting for Bai Xiaochun to speak. It took Bai Xiaochun a moment to organize his thoughts, after which, he began to speak, his expression placid, but seemingly profound, like someone who had long since achieved the Tao. Love is a complex and ever-changing thing, like an entire world of interlocking thoughts and emotions. It's not common for people to be able to see things clearly when it comes to love, especially considering how many things affect it. Consider one's personality, one's actions, one's status, and one's other relationships all play a part, as well as sundry other factors. Placing his drinking vessel down, he slowly continued, loving someone is a simple thing. However, getting that person to love you back is a skill unto itself. Upon first entering the cultivation world, I did not shrink back from that tribulation called love, and in fact, dominated the field for decades. I received 37,931 love letters, and won the hearts of tens of thousands of young women. I've seen many instances of love, and seen many beautiful women age and fall by the wayside. Although I can't say that I understand everything about the topic, based on what I've experienced, I can claim to have learned a bit. Waving his sleeve, he stuck his chin up, and from the look in his eye, he seemed to have many profound thoughts running through his head. Master God Diviner's eyes went even wider than before, and as for Songke, his lips curled with a bit of scorn. The two of them exchanged a look, and both could see how much the other was scoffing at Bai Xiaochun's blatant, showy display. Zhao Tianzhao coughed dryly, and was about to say something when Bai Xiaochun suddenly gave him a piercing look. What I am about to explain now is a secret that took me half a lifetime to perfect. Anyone who masters this secret will have the power to shake heaven and earth, and even cause signs to appear in the sky. Were it to fall into the wrong hands, wicked hands, it would lead to countless young women being struck witless with terror, and likely, plunged into an abyss of misery. Therefore, all of you must remember that this is a secret which cannot be spread beyond this room. The field of love is like the field of battle. In battle, you seek victory, and in love, you seek to win the heart of the person you love. Therefore, I, Bai Xiaochun, have taken everything I have learned in life, and combined it all into a single character. Win. As he spoke, his voice grew louder, and seemed to surge with intensity. When you break apart the character Wen Ying into all its smaller elements, you get Wang Death, Ko Mouth, Yu Moon, Bai Shell Money, Fan and Mortal. The Death character represents an awareness of deadly crisis. The Mouth character represents the power to communicate properly. The Moon character represents how important timing and the environment are. The Shell Money character represents how important spirit stones are. The Mortal character represents how you must always keep your mortal heart calm and peaceful, especially in critical moments. Upon hearing these words, Zhao Tianzhao's expression flickered. He wasn't the only one to react in such a way. Master God Diviner couldn't keep his expression calm, and Song Qiu's mind began to spin with numerous thoughts. Even Zhao Tianzhao's two followers gasped, as though they had just received important enlightenment. Never before in their lives had they heard words spoken like this, and the more they thought about them, the more they made sense. This is the summary of all the insight of Love Saint Bai Xiaochun. My secret method, the wind charm. To emphasize his words, Bai Xiaochun slapped his hand down onto the ground, the sound of which echoed into the minds of everyone present, leaving them utterly shaken. This. Master God Diviner looked in shock at Bai Xiaochun, his mind filled with thoughts of the wind charm. Song Ke was gaping in disbelief, trying to figure out how Bai Xiaochun could possibly have come up with something like this. Zhao Tianzhao lost control of his breathing for a moment before calming down. As of this moment, he was completely convinced that Bai Xiaochun knew what he was talking about. He really was like a diva, and his wind charm left Zhao Tianzhao feeling as if he had been struck by lightning. Suddenly, whole new worlds of possibility had opened up. This guy took the battlefield that is love, he thought, and all the techniques and skills involved with it, and bound them together into a single character. Just how profoundly skilled is he? Zhao Tianzhao couldn't stop from rising to his feet, clasping hands, and bowing deeply to Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun looked completely and utterly calm. Furthermore, at some unknown point, he had produced a fan, which he slowly swished through the air as he gazed around with an enigmatic smile on his face. The truth was that Bai Xiaochun hadn't come up with the wind charm on his own. He had received quite a bit of help from Imposter Nightcrypt. After all, back in the Bloodstream sect, Imposter Nightcrypt had gained a lot of experience in the love department. Although all of his experiences had left him shedding proverbial tears of blood, were it not for his special techniques, neither he nor anyone else in his position could ever have accomplished what he had. A profound look appeared in Bai Xiaochun's eyes as he slowly said, "The wind charm is just an overview, which I have explained to you today so that you can understand how the field of love is just like the field of battle. And now, I will give a more detailed explanation of the essence of the wind charm. Death, Mouth, Moon, Shell Money, Mortal. The first aspect is the Death character, which represents an awareness of deadly crisis. You need to be prepared for dangerous threats at any moment, and must always remind yourself that a crisis might be around the next corner. After all, elder sister Chen is a natural-born beauty with spectacular latent talent. You can't just simply think of her as a young woman with no Taoist partner. Obviously, there are many other disciples in the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect who secretly have a crush on her, so many that you have no way of knowing how many there are. In fact, forget about the sect as a whole. Even on this very ship, there are surely many disciples who are already in love with her, so if you ignore that sensation of crisis now, then you have already met defeat. To Zhao Tianzhao, Bai Xiaochun's words felt like a fist punching him in the face. Moments ago, he had felt as if he suddenly understood things more, but now he was left shaking in fear. The truth was that he truly did care about Chen Yushan, but because of his personality, found it impossible to express himself directly. He didn't even know how to try to woo her. Therefore, when he had seen how easily Bai Xiaochun seemed to handle women, he had come to him for advice. First, he had been shaken by Bai Xiaochun's love letters, and then came the shocking wind charm. By now, he had complete and utter faith, and couldn't wait to hear what was coming next. So, what am I supposed to do? He asked anxiously. Calm down, Bai Xiaochun said sincerely, I'm not finished yet. Although you must always foster that sense of crisis, you mustn't let it show on your face. Keep it alive in your heart only. That way, you will always understand that time is limited. Zhao Tianzhao took a deep breath to calm himself down. Seeing that, Bai Xiaochun's eyes twinkled with approval. Nodding his head, he continued, very good. Now, let's move on to the mouth character, which represents communication and interaction. You say you love elder sister Chen, therefore, I won't even wait for your response to the next issue. Have you told her about your feelings, or done anything to act on them? Obviously not, and that's fine. You don't want to be too hasty about such matters. However, you need to find more opportunities to interact with her, and when you do, you must be charming and witty. That's very important. And don't worry about what exactly to say. I'll teach you everything. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.